I was told to come here to talk about stewardship, what it means in my life. As Miss Goodell said, I work on a farm, the Stone Martin Center for Food and Agriculture. It's about an hour south of here. What I found there and at other farms is pretty simple. I found that stewardship is much more than an ecological service. Stewardship is a feeling. A farm is a place of healing. We're not just healing the land, we're healing ourselves. In fact, the unwritten qualities for knowing how to heal a piece of land may be intimately connected with our personal sense of self. In fact, I write poetry as I farm. I thought it would be pertinent to read some because I think it's the best way to express this feeling. The name of the poem is called The Seeing Tree. If I could see what you see, what would I look for? If I could dream the everlasting dream, why would I fight? Why would I hold on so tight while you sit there like a tree? While you sit there like a tree, I run around afraid, looking at the morsels, the pieces of dirt that cover my face, that reflect my shame, my shame with youthful fame. Here my mind chases you around. Here my mind falls flat on the ground into that moment of grace, that moment where you left me by the tree, to see beyond the water, the rocks, and the fish that always run, to see beyond the wood that holds your treeness to bear witness. Here I realize from what's seen that seeing is nothing more than to realize what is me. I'm not too different from the people in this audience. I grew up in the suburbs of Baltimore. My parents believed in good education, hard work, and sports. Most of all, they believed in giving a better life to their children. I'm certain that many of you have similar parents, or you wouldn't be sitting here today in this chapel. I'm also certain, because I didn't, that many of you don't fully understand what has been given to you yet. And I found the faster I figured this out, the better equipped I became for the real world. Understanding how privileged we are can become a gateway for service. You will see how service, this idea of giving, whether that be to giving a better life to your children or to grow food for your community, may be the most important part of your Millbrook education. With service in mind, I think it's important to thank our teachers. No one understands service better than a good teacher, especially here, to teach 4 classes, coach 3 sports, sometimes hold an administrative office, participate in dorm duty, and the other responsibilities held here by your teachers. Well, that's just about as difficult as a job is that is out there. The only other profession that may compare is farming. So why do we choose these difficult professions? Why did I choose it? The real turning point for me was almost exactly a decade ago. I was a junior in college studying natural and cultural ecology in Central America. I was living in a small Mayan village farming. It was beautiful. It was a real subsistence culture. It opened my eyes to a way of life that seemed extremely foreign. I was used to a very fast-paced private school environment, much like this one. The idea of living off a piece of land was very romantic, and I reveled in it. I'd been there for 3 months, I finally took a bus home to call my family from a payphone. Once I did that, it all became very serious. My father had been diagnosed with lung cancer, and he had less than a year to live. Thoreau once said, "This is the moment where I grew up. When you feel that deep suffering, everything else that you deem important seemed to go away." Thoreau once said, "Rather than love, than money, than fame, give me truth." And I've tried my best to live in truth and with full awareness since then. Part of that truth at the time for me meant letting go of fear, the fear of failure. I was haunted by inadequacy. My struggle in an academic environment was compensated with a whole lot of effort. Turns out that farming would be a great profession for me. My father's sickness made me realize that living in fear, not going for it, was time wasted. So I enrolled in the environmental science program despite my fear of natural sciences or getting bad grades. These questions of what you want to do with your life became clear. I wanted to be a steward. I wanted to be life-giving, not life-taking, and I wanted to serve. The book of Genesis in the Bible illustrates two trees, the tree of life and the tree of knowledge. Once Adam and Eve taste the tree of knowledge, they become aware that they are naked and they cover themselves. Farming means being comfortable with not knowing, because you simply cannot predict what will happen with the weather, how much it will rain, when you will have frost, if there will be a disease outbreak, or if there will be a terrible storm. You have to be comfortable year after year that you may lose it all. Knowledge has become a tool for us, but it is also this knowledge that creates fear. The fear of not knowing. This is exactly what drives Adam and Eve to pick from the tree of knowledge rather than accepting the unknown. Here's a story of farming. I admit I pulled from a few different stories here to try and show some of the real-world challenges. It's a Friday in the middle of October. I just worked 15 hard days in a row, and my coworker went down with a back injury, leaving the farm work in my hands. Meanwhile, the farm owner is busy. He's counseling his 65-year-old friend and fellow organic farmer how to figure out how to treat his cancer. He's a well-educated guy from California who dedicated 40 hard years to service in organic farming. In fact, he was one of the pillars in starting the movement. And he's unable to afford health insurance and is slowly dying from cancer. I'm meanwhile harvesting spinach, arugula, broccoli, and cabbage. It's all back-breaking work. You squat down, you work very fast in one position, and you do it all by hand, at least the type of farming that I was doing. Then you spend hours meticulously washing it, like carrot, celery root, and eggs. Anything that needs washing. This all requires a great deal of water, but customers are used to buying things clean, so if you want to sell your product, you better wash it. I'm in the greenhouse listening to music, having fun washing vegetables, always working as efficiently as possible. But it's not all fun. Sometimes your mind gets away. Am I too afraid? Am I too good for what feels like these mindless tasks? Am I wasting my time? I'm lucky to make $700 at market tomorrow, and I just figured out that I'm worth about $5 an hour. Not exactly the wage that my mother was hoping I would be making after graduating from Yale at age 29. While I'm in the greenhouse washing vegetables, the farm owner comes running in. There's a huge storm passing through, and we have to close everything up. That night, we get a foot of snow, something unheard of in the middle of October. All the trees still had their leaves. They were top-heavy because the photosynthetic energy was still concentrated in their canopy. The extra weight from the snow and the lack of the time that the trees had to adapt to put their sap in their trunks made a great number of them fall. Many on people's houses living in this small farming community. Many of these homesteaders were living off of less than $10,000 a year. The fallen trees were everywhere. They cut out power lines, and people were left without power for weeks. For me and the other young people in the community, that meant spending weekends and free time cleaning up the mess, chainsawing trees, shoveling snow, and repairing roofs. What is most important here is despite everyone's busy lives, this did not become a burden. It was fun. Helping each other was ingrained in the culture of the community, something familiar in most farm communities. What one could compare to a really tight-knit sports team. This is the heart of stewardship. But what does it actually take to succeed as a farmer? in today's world, and what does it actually take to be a steward? I'm a little too young to fully know this, but I have an inkling. Sir Albert Howard, the father of organic farming, says when describing the law of return, when nature farms, she recycles everything. She never wastes. She always leaves a reserve, always has a period of fallow, and always includes animals. Farming with nature means understanding nature. At the very least, that means knowing the names of the plants, being able to identify them, knowing their nutritional needs, and understanding how to make that nutrition from the soil available for plants to consume. But we live in a world that prioritizes inside work above all else. As Thomas Berry said, we live in a political world, a nation, a business world, an economic order. Somewhere along the way, we decided it would be a good idea to develop chemicals in a lab to help compensate for the smaller amount of time we were willing to spend outdoors. These chemicals kill the pests and the weeds that would otherwise build our observation skills and tell us what is going on in the soil. We decided to put our fields in sod because we would rather be mowing lawns than letting animals graze those fields. We decided that we wanted to be indoors more than outdoors, and now we have far too many things going on to change that paradigm. When do we have time to observe the physics or poetry of a tree, or from watching a plant grow, or taking care of an animal, or watch one birth? Let me paint you a picture of a young farmer who found a piece of land with the hope to steward it. When I said earlier that stewardship means life-giving, not life-exploiting, I mean that we want to improve its soil fertility. We want to deepen our topsoil so water can be absorbed like a sponge, not run off on a piece of concrete into our waste stream, or carry debris into the streams that we will ultimately consume in fish or drinking water. We want to build the diversity on a farm, both in genetic diversity and by thinking about our farm beyond its monetary production. We need pollinators, which will only come through biological diversity in our plants. We need to think about a farm like we think about our diets. We don't want to be eating potatoes all day. We need a diverse set of foods, and our farm should be a mirror image of our diets and vice versa. Creating a farm that follows these principles of land stewardship is a real challenge. A few years of training, a friend from Baltimore decided he wanted to start his own farm business. He found a piece of land with no infrastructure, water, or electricity. He not only had to dream up what the farm would look like, what crops he would plant and what trees he would grow, he had to build a house, a barn, a deer fence, and pump water from the nearby stream. And he had to do all this with less than $8,000 in his pocket. This meant a lot of grant writing to ask money from the government and asking for help from your neighbors and friends. It can be difficult to build a fence or a house alone. His goal as a steward was to produce all his own food and to use zero outside inputs. This is an ambitious and romantic goal because you quickly find as a farmer that we are all interdependent. In the same way, where you cannot build a house alone, you cannot create a farm alone. We have too many dependencies, and this is why community is very important, much like this one. Most farms buy their seeds or animal breeds from a person or company who specialize in this. The same goes for compost, potting mix, or your tools. This group of young farmers who want to grow their food without any inorganic chemicals or fertilizers, we all depend on each other. And this ethic is rapidly growing. We all do our part to impact the consumer's perception of our food, so our children won't have to kill themselves 50 years from now just to do what is right. While I was in college, I was impacted by a great African proverb. If many little people do many little things in many little places, we can change the world. The important part of this phrase is little, because it's a recognition of humility. And to be a part of a community like this requires humility. There's no better place than the Millbrook School to be a part of that community and to raise the literacy of young people about the necessary hard work and values behind good food. I will leave you with a few questions. Why do we all desire the convenience where we buy food like we buy toys? Do we think farming or physical labor is below us? We all eat food, and it is moments like this, when we're all together around a table, that is what equality feels like. Where class rank, the color of your skin, our gender, where we're from, and where we're going, it all has the potential to go away at those tables or in those fields. With that, I hope the enthusiasm for this farm is as strong amongst the students as I know it is amongst the dedicated faculty and staff. I wanted to take this opportunity to personally thank Mrs. Goodale for inviting me here and for her mentor, Kathy Havard, and colleague, Luda Pope. Your ambition is honest and inspiring. Thank you for letting me be a part of it.